110 in our little book, and in our big book it is 145 in the big book. Okay, I'll take the report as read. Okay. Hang on, I've got a... Are there any questions? Okay, Mallet, King, Pascoe, King, Thurster and seconder, mover and seconder. Those in, all we're doing is receiving the report. Any debate? No debate. Those in favour, those against, carried. Is there anyone against? Okay, thank you. Unanimous. I'm saying unanimous because I've been told that I have to say unanimous. Yeah. No, that's good. I'm very happy to do it. Okay, item 14, should we actually go to item 15?
Yep,
Is there any hope that Sean's going to get here?
yes.
There is some hope.
It's still a wee way away, so let's do...
Okay, so we'll do item 15, beg your pardon, Waikato Local Authority Shared Services, otherwise known as LAS, page 136 in your little book. Where is it in here?
It's no. It's on page 197. 197,
197. So 197 in 197 in the big book. And 137 in the little book. Sorry, 136 in the little book. Blair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and Councillors. Look, I'm happy to take questions on the report. Just a reminder that Waikato LAS is a company of all councils in the Waikato. We all have equal shareholding in the company. The purpose of the company is to deliver shared services on behalf of all councils or those councils who wish to participate in initiatives in the Waikato. And outlined in the report is a number of the activities of the LAS company. These are in particular summarised from page, I'll just get the page number, from page 209 of the report, where it just works through the various achievements of LAS. What I would say is that LAS is a self-funding operation, so in other words, the contributions from the members for various initiatives then pay for the activities of those initiatives. The LAS does deliver substantial financial and non-financial benefits, and examples are in things such as joined-up procurement initiatives, insurance, the rating database scheme, the building cluster, areas such as aligned planning, the GIS systems, health and safety, learning and development. So there's a range of activities and initiatives that LAS is involved with to I guess, help councils get the benefit of scale, access to smart thinking or the benefits of risk mitigation. Just my final comment, Chair, is that the directors, of which I'm a director of LAS, are currently going through a strategic review process looking at the longer term direction of the company and also what the appropriate governance and management structure is for LAS to ensure that we can deliver for the longer term in terms of opportunities to transform the delivery of local government services in a joined up manner. So happy to take questions around that.
Blair, so this is again a look back in history, what we're doing today. There has been discussion about how do we try and I'm using these words and they're sort of woolly words, I know that, get a more strategic approach to what we're doing with this. That is a better discussion, that is a discussion better held over to the statement of intent discussions and things like that. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Although what I would say, Councillor Mallet, is off the back of Hamilton's statement of intent direction, I have taken a very proactive approach around the desire for LAS to take an even more transformational sort of service delivery partner role, and I've been advocating that heavily through the review process. So that process is still underway, but I think there are many opportunities that LAS could get involved with to take a much bigger leadership role in joined up shared services delivery which we're working through the other fellow directors and the other councils.
So it's a little bit about the local authorities that are involved, forgetting where the boundaries end and start, and thinking, okay, what can we do together where there's, and it's not just buying our toilet paper a lot cheaper and things like that. Yeah.
I think it's the possibilities of the IT systems. It's the possibilities of a number of those services where some councils can't have access to scale, others have access to scale. How do we deliver those in a way that boundaries are irrelevant? A lot of the back office functions that we have don't need to be delivered by every single council in duplication. You take a lot of the services that, for example, General Manager David provides, they could be delivered in a scaled-up manner. It just relies on LAS taking a leadership role to show the opportunities to those councils and to drive those business cases and make those opportunities available.
Okay. And bearing in mind that there may be some funding consequences.
There undoubtedly
may
will
or
be.
may not be.
And look, let's be frank here. The opportunities for the smaller councils are huge, but the impact for the smaller councils and their local communities is a real challenge for some of those councils, because part of those councils see that local employment is a key role of the council. What they don't see is the opportunities that they're missing out on in terms of access to a much higher level of service, potentially at a lower cost, far more sustainable. So that's the conversation that we're having with those councils and with those other directors.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Sorry, Rob.
Thanks, Blair. Look, I had written down strategic plan with question mark on my notes when I was reading this, and I'm pleased that LAS is undergoing a strategic plan. It's always been my view that LAS is underutilised, and there must be a huge number of opportunities. So I'm just wondering, in that strategic plan, are you able to tell us what, are you looking at this underutilisation and what the opportunities might be?
I mean, I think absolutely, Councillor Rob, and I've described, I guess, some of the areas where I have been strongly advocating. I think there's a range of other things I haven't touched on. It starts with the philosophical approach of the company and the directors, and part of what I'm challenging the other directors and the shareholders is when you're a director of LAS, you need to take off your chief executive hat and put on a director's hat and look at what the purpose of LAS is. The purpose of LAS, in my eyes, is to deliver the best possible joined-up shared services, identify transformational opportunities for us to reinvent how we deliver these services in a joined-up way, and then ensure we have a governance structure and an executive structure to deliver that. And so, Rob, some of the things that you come to, if you take that approach, is there a need for an independent chair, some fresh part-time CEO? I think the resourcing of LAS needs to be increased to enable LAS to have the bandwidth to deliver these. But my firm view is there are substantial savings that we could make if we joined up on a number of these activities. And I only look to the health sector, where I see health sector delivers joined up solutions. I look at Tracy Musty. She came from an organisation prior to here where they delivered shared services to about 70 companies. There are many possibilities which I believe LAS could get involved with. I also think that LAS could look to work with other LASs. There is a LAS in the Bay of Plenty, for example, where we don't have to just think about the Waikato. There are solutions which could be for some bigger councils across areas where we could also find opportunities. So I think there are endless possibilities.
Do you...
Oh, sorry, Councillor Pesco.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add on. I just had further... I mean, you mentioned about the governance structure, and when I see that the existing directors, and without being critical of them, are all the CEOs of individual councils, to me that could be an impediment to a group of directors who might actually see that objectively what those opportunities, more objectively what those opportunities are, rather than seeing what how a strategic alliance might impact upon their individual council. So is it possible that one of the outcomes of your strategic plan might be that you replace most of the directors with independent directors, as opposed to having that strong council representation?
I have certainly advocated for a mix of chief executive and independents on the board. I think there's a need for both, because I think you need to have both elements there. But certainly, at a minimum, I would see an independent chair would be a good addition to the board. So that's the process we work through, Rob.
I've got a very strong view, and I'm sort of leaning to where I think you're alluding to, Councillor Rob. This entity needs to be far bolder in what it's trying to achieve and broader in terms of its catchment that it applies itself to. The 11 directors, Blair?
Yep.
11 directors is far too much for an effective company of that type. And I think you need to be there as a skills-based appointment. I think it should be one local government representative and 5 external skills-based appointments. One of the things I've asked Mayor Andrew to include in his base budget, which is up to debate by council, is to provide some additional money for me to investigate other opportunities to go harder if the other Waikato entities aren't wishing to go bolder. We need to look at ourselves and how we can go bolder without them, because there are a number of councils around the country that are really keen to collaborate with us. But at this point in time, we're focusing on the partnerships we already have. If that doesn't succeed, we will look at other opportunities to drive harder in other areas. And I'm hoping I can bring a paper back to this council that supports that approach.
Okay, sorry to cut you off. We're moving kind of a little bit into the statement of intent discussion, which will be had later on, and these are all bloody good points to be raising. But today we're looking at what they've achieved, and I'm not trying to knock people out, but we have got people who've been waiting for a wee while to...
It's just that the statement of intent is attached to the report too.
Yeah, this is last year's
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just summarise to that point? I think LAS has been very successful in the activities it has championed, and it is certainly looking to continue to pursue new initiatives, and it is generating substantial benefits to the councils. And just to close it out, 3 years ago, LAS produced a document called Collaboration in Action. That document is intended to be produced again by December this year, which is a summary of all the activities and the benefits that LAS is providing, both financial and non-financial.
I do have a number of other questions, but I'm happy to defer those until the statement of intent. But perhaps just one last question.
I'm very happy for you to do questions about the report today.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, just one last question, just to wrap it up. The statement, are you likely to have completed your strategic plan before we get the statement of intent for 2018?
Yes.
So the statement of intent will include what you've taken out of your strategic plan in terms of what we can then discuss.
Correct.
In terms of going forward.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And don't forget, we have to approve that statement of intent.
Yeah.
Blair produces a draft. Yes.
So the timing of that is when...
So the statement of intent comes at about the end of March next year.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Is there any... Oh, Jeff, I think I saw your name there before. Okay. I'll move that the Finance Committee receive the report. Do I have a seconder? Mallet, Pascoe. Those in favour, those against. Is anyone against? Okay, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. I assume you're here because Sean's not.
Well, I'm here for the
No, sorry.
Talking to Chair.
I'm talking to Chad. Sorry, beg your pardon. Sorry. I was looking right through you. Chad.
To allow Sean to get here, we could either go back and do...
Okay, all right. We've got New Zealand, the people from Whipple and New Zealand Food here, but they're going to be required to hang around anyway for a...
But that gives time for Sean to get here.
Okay, all right. Well, we could do... All right, we'll do... Okay, shall we do the public part of Waikato Innovation Park? So we're now looking at item 16. It's page 137 of your big report, of your little report, and page 267 of the big book. If that makes sense to you. Thank you. So
we've just got the annual accounts,
So we've got-
obviously.
yes. So Earl Rattray, Chairman.
Yes.
Stu Gordon, CEO.
Well, thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to report to you formally. As you know, Whipple is principally a commercial property business. I think perceptively and astutely seed-funded by the council some 15 years ago. And it specialises in agri-tech tenancies. It's got 2 subsidiary components. One is being part of the national Food Innovation Network, which in our case is Food Innovation Waikato, and of course the business development function. So during this last year, Chairman, we've continued to build on, I think, the growing success of the park. Stuart will be reporting in some detail on the numbers and on the metrics around tenancies, etc. But from the board's perspective, just as an introduction, I can say that we've been very satisfied with the year under review, the year ending 30 June 17. Again, revenue was up. Again, profitability is up, and it's achieving a respectable return on the value of your investment in the business. So it's the business is in good shape, and we're very happy to report that. But it is one of those businesses that will have to continue to grow to remain relevant in the future. Our capacity is full. And the subsidiary dryer in particular is what we're going to talk to you about later on. In particular, we need to be growing that business because the demand for that commercialisation of ideas to commercial products, I have to say, has exceeded our expectation, and we believe that there's more opportunity out there to grow business in the Waikato. And we will be bringing forward a full plan to you in due course on that development. So with that, the parks is ripe to grow. I think it is a good time for the council to crystallise the value that's been created for that investment that you wisely made 15 years ago. And I know that's all in progress at the moment. So with that introduction, Chairman, I'm going to hand over to Stuart to talk you through the formal numbers.
Thanks, Earl.
So, Mr Chairman and councillors, I'll just talk to the IWL group, which you have there, just hit some big numbers and then open for question. So,
the financial statements are starting on page 274 of your agendas.
And there's a Chairman's and Chief Executive's annual report contained therein, and
Yep.
I'll just speaking to that. So, as the Chairman has said, this year, $11.4 million our turnover now. That's a growth of 11%. But probably more importantly, our profit grew from 1.5 to just over 2 million. That's a profit before tax. That's a 41% increase. So what makes up that is, firstly, our property area has grown in revenue and profit, and that's basically around our Tetra Pak building, which was this year was the first full year. We built it the previous year, and offset a bit by some extra maintenance we've had to spend. So the property section has grown by 9% and profit by 10.8% to be $1 million. And then our food business, while the revenue hasn't grown much from 6.7 to 7 million, profitability has doubled. That's basically because of we put in what you'd call a kitchen in the front of our dryer that allows us to mix and make highly elaborate formulas, such as infant formulas, and that was the need that was requested by the market, specifically in the area of sheep milk. We are the only manufacturers in the whole of New Zealand of sheep milk infant formulas. They all come through us. It's a growing business. The MPI plans are to, within the next 10 years, to make that a $700 million business, and it's all starting here in the Waikato and all comes through our dryer, and we're at the forefront. It's not exactly easy because we are the first players in this worldwide, but we've been successful to date. So our profitability is actually driven out of that growth from the sheep milk industry. And just some quick big numbers aligned with the statement of intent we put in. The amount of production days, we said we'd do 300, we did 302 days, which for a dairy plant is extraordinary to do 302 days per year. Total exports out of a plant, we said we'd do 50 million. The numbers coming back from our customers showed exports out of a plant last year were 53 million. So we produce a lot of exports for New Zealand from that sheep milk. Our property, we said we'd have an occupancy rate of 98%. Well, we achieved 97%, and the only downside we had of that is we changed over from the university with new tenants coming into that space, and it's now completely full. And those were basically the key parameters. Capital expenditure, we kept under what we said in the statement of intent by about half. So, Mr Chairman, they are the big numbers, and just open up for any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, oh, sorry. Leo.
Sheep milk seems to be the big issue at the moment. I noticed you're producing just over 10 tonne per week. Where's all the stuff go to?
A range of, we have 3 main customers who are selling internationally. It's all exported. I'd say probably 1 or 2% might be retained in New Zealand. And it goes to a range of markets from Korea, Taiwan, Malaysia and China. Okay. Are the main markets. So it is Asian orientated, and sheep milk has some certain attributes which is a selling point, and the main attribute is around digestibility compared to cow's milk. Okay. And hence its appeal in the Asian market. It also has some benefits around taste.
So all the sheep farmers down south, well, there's not many of them left in Southland now, I suppose. All their milk is actually sent here to you guys, and you process it from here.
Yeah, there's one big farm in Southland that there is a factory down there that they turn it into just whole milk powder. Oh, okay. So they dry it, and then it comes up to here to be converted into infant formula because they're unable to make it down there. Their plant is not of a standard, and it's a very difficult area to make. You have to be exactly right. We're in new territory because the formulas are all different. It's different to make. So we're the only place that actually effectively makes sheep milk at the moment. There'll be others that we'll probably teach to make in New Zealand.
Thank you, Leo. Any other questions? Okay. I'll move the recommendation that the Finance Committee receive the report, which is on page 137. I'll move. Ziggy second. Those in favour, those against. Is anyone against? That's unanimous. Thank you. Now, we'll just go straight into item 17, which is the discussion on New Zealand Food Innovation Spray Dry 2, page 138. Right. Now, just be careful. This is also a topic that is in another Correct. Part of our agenda.
Correct. So I cover the areas that are actually in.
Okay, sorry, this is page 138 of your.
That is in your public distribution area. The board at its meeting last month approved a business case to go forward to develop, to plan for a dryer 2. And that dryer, being a completely separate entity, actually funded 90% by the users of that dryer. So, to be managed actually by Food Waikato, with Food Waikato having a 10% shareholding, 5% by paying and 5% by earn-out. I must first quite clear that the funding from this will come from Food Waikato from its operating, so that 1.4 that's required to fund the 5% will come from Food Waikato's operating cash flows, and you've seen our performance last year and it continues on, that allows us to do that. While this is not a major transaction and therefore does fall within the delegated authority, we stated this in the statement of intent last year that we would bring this back to you. for your endorsement. So it is in line with the statement of intent. Now, what is behind this? Obviously, the present dry, as the Chairman has said, is full. 308 days we think we'll do this year. And so, and there's also a sizable list of other customers we want to help. Our business is about moving people on so we can make more business and more exports for New Zealand. And we are full. We've done the financial modelling, and again, that modelling is pretty concrete because we know this business quite well now, been operating for a few years. But the main area, of course, is the sheep milk industry. This new industry, there is a series of activities going on, been announced by Landcorp and others, investing heavily in new farms, etc., to try and build this industry. Those investments are being made now. They come on stream in 3 years' time, and we need to have the capacity to be able to meet those needs. At the same time, it helps the sustainability of the existing dryer because we can share overheads, particularly management overheads. So we're looking at sustainability of our open access dryer being helped by this dryer 2 coming on board. This has government support. There's and there's public monies through the Primary Growth Partnership being invested to support the sheep milk industries. We have a true proven track record, as was said, 53 million of exports per annum at the moment out of our factory. We think we can do 129 million out of the new dryer 2. We have, like we presently do, we'll de-risk it by entering into take or pays, but remembering this is a separate entity which will have no, is not secured by dryer 1, that the present owners, this is standalone, owned by 90% by these users, but we think we can de-risk it and work it and create a greater opportunity by take or pay contracts, which we pleasantly do. I provide further background that's available that tells you about the government strategy, a bit of the history, who we help, the sales, and it's aligned with the statement of intent, Mr. Chairman, in that paper.
Thanks, Stu. Just a couple of questions I've got. So page 140 of your agenda, councillors, paragraph 22. Earlier on, it talks about the cost of the new dryer, the dryer number 2 would be $45 million, of which New Zealand Food Innovation Waikato Limited, which is us, so to speak, is going to pay $1.4 million. That's
correct.
Cash from its own profits. Yeah, from its own profit. Plus another 104 million will be gifted to us, 1.4 million.
1.4, yep.
So that equals 2.8 million.
Correct.
2.8 of 45 million is only 6%. Yet we're getting ownership of at 10%.
Yeah, the total assets will have some gearing with it.
Oh.
So if you work out gearing of, say, 60% of being equity and 40% borrowings, you then get those numbers.
So the error I made was I thought that the whole 45 was going to be equity, but there's some...
There'll be some gearing.
Yeah, okay, all right. That clears that up, thank you. Paragraph 28, now this is the staff report, so you may or may not have seen this. So our paragraph 28 says, existing New Zealand Food Information Waikato Limited dryer sustainability is enhanced through shared management costs and intellectual property charge. I understand the shared management bit. You know, you've got a guy out there who's the boss, he is the centre of excellence, and that's all. Some people out there that are that. Yep. But what about intellectual property charge? Who will own? Well,
there's a whole series of when you set up something like this, it needs to be export ready or to be able to be export. Yep. There's a series of things you have to set in place. A risk management plan, which is quite elaborate to set up. Yeah. There's a whole series of how do you run these things for sheep milk infant formula. Now, the idea being here, because we bring this to the table, we expect some sort of payment for this,
This is the how do we do this thing?
That's right.
How do we not?
We're expecting D2 to make a payment for that intellectual property, if you like to call it, or that know-how, over a series of years, therefore helping the costs of D1.
So, well, that's not part of your ex gratia.
No, that's on top of.
Okay, so that's on top of. So this is a further income back to
That's right.
the business we currently.
You've just got to remember that these dryers are not, they're only 1.5, well, this is 1.2 and the other one's only half a tonne.
Yeah.
They're quite small and therefore costs compared to, say, drying Turapa, etc., are quite different.
Yeah.
So trying to make sustainability of dryer one is very important for us because that's our driving force for economic development.
Okay, thank you. And just on paragraph 32, it says, have you got this in front of you?
But Blair's showing me it. As we go.
So on paragraph 32, it says the new dryer will deliver 129 million in exports. Oh, sorry. I've written down over what payment, but I've just seen the PA there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that exercise, well, the one just above, we talk about 53 million. That wasn't just a flick in the air. We actually went out on, Callaghan wanted to know what the number was. So we went out with all of our customers, found out what selling prices were, what the volumes were, etc. I think it took about a week to gather all that with an independent actually coming in and testing that. So these are not figures made up, they're actually independently tested to be able to go into a report that went to government.
Okay. And you said that the other investors, who are also going to be the customers, primarily, they will be funding it, funding the lion's share of it.
Correct.
And also they will be required to provide it business, which is your take or pay
Correct.
scenario.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's the same scenario we use. That we at the moment, we are a position of being of high value to them because of our know-how, lack of other opportunities, etc. So we're using that as leverage to ensure that we can de-risk the business.
Okay. In the pink, there's a whole lot of pricing stuff. Obviously, that stuff's A, in the pink, and B, subject to change.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Competition may come, etc.
Or demand might drop, or all sorts of things could happen.
Yeah, sure. That's business.
Okay. Yep. All right. Thank you. Rob.
Chair, thanks for the presentation. Stuart, you mentioned that the board had approved the business case for the new spray dryer company. Which board is that? Is that the Food Waikato or the Innovation Park board?
The Food Waikato board, it's still subject to a review. This is one step along the path, getting the owners on board, and we're doing the same with Callaghan. And then the board will come back in February, March, and we'll step the whole other steps, resource consents, all these sorts of things have got to all fall in line to give the final approval. I just must add that.
So Innovation Park doesn't make a decision on this because it's a shareholder, isn't it?
Yes, it would make it.
It's a 70% shareholder.
If it still exists in March, it will.
Yeah, okay, all right.
If it did still exist in March.
Okay, so you mentioned about take or pay sale contracts, which I think is mentioned in our paragraph 33. Could you explain what take or pay sales contracts are?
Yes,
Please,
so basically we sign up a customer for, say, 100 days of production. So we're a toll manufacturer, we charge them on a daily rate. And it's like
so they contract to take 100 days a
100
year
days,
of
right?
drying.
That's
Yep,
right.
yep.
So it's like a motel. Somebody rings up, I want to book the place, and then they don't arrive, you don't get your money. Well, we don't want to be like that motel. So what we say, there's 100 days you're booked for, and we might agree that 90 of those are set. You pay them even if you don't arrive. So there's all reasons why they mightn't arrive. The ingredients they mightn't have got the ingredients to go into the product. They might have changed their mind. The market might have changed, etc. However, we say to them, well, our contract, because you've got all the gains from the market. We're just a toll manufacturer. It's not our risk. The market risk is yours, and therefore the market benefits. So we say to them, no matter if you use it or don't use it, you're still going to pay.
And these contracts will be with the other three shareholders.
That's correct. So,
Or predominantly with the other three shareholders
And anybody
who will potentially be owners of the second company. So they will have not only as a customer but also as a shareholder an incentive to use their 100 days or whatever number of days.
so each one of those customers are looking for capacity. That's why they want to join us.
Yep.
They'll have two contracts. One is as an owner, and one as a shareholder. They marry together. You can't be a shareholder unless you sign a sales contract. But
Sorry, Stu, did you say one as a shareholder and one as a company owner? I mean,
well,
one
they
as a
have two
customer.
contracts with
in this
one
case.
One as a customer.
one
or
as a customer and one as a shareholder.
Yeah.
And we lock these in with written contracts, do we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't do any manufacture.
Yep, okay.
Chairman, it just might be worth just noting, this is a fairly standard provision. In fact, it's exactly what we do now at Dryer 1. And we've got surplus demand for the capacity. If we book it, then we're actually
You're turning another customer
turning
away.
someone else down.
Yep.
So
okay.
it does work. It's well understood within the sector, and it's the only thing you can really appropriately do in this case.
Okay. The food company, as I read it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the food company is going to put 1.4 million in, and that's coming from past profits or past profits of the company. If the investment doesn't go ahead, would that $1.4 million be available as a dividend to the shareholders? So I guess in a roundabout way, am I saying, are we foregoing our dividend to invest in this number 2 co?
Sorry, Rob, can I just interrupt you there? You may be right or you may be wrong. Rob said that 1.4 million will come from previous income. It's coming from the future income, isn't it?
It's a combination of both. We've built up the equity.
Yeah.
From the past, you'll see there's, I can't remember, it's $1 million of surplus from this year.
Yep.
So we're building up the equity. We also, of course, I just believe as part of the sale process also, you might want to comment on that.
So my perception is that that $1.4 million will be paid from income. So instead of whatever owns that thing by the time we get there, it will be coming from the income that it would have received from the future sales. Is that right? Are you going to put Are you going to give them $1.4 million on as the thing is being built?
As I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, on day one of New Co 2, Food Waikato will write out a cheque for 1.4 million and put that into the pot with the other shareholders and the bank or whoever lends the money to spend the $45 million on the second drive.
Correct.
I think the context here is, if you recall back to the sale of Waikato Innovation Park and the restructure that needs to occur and the investment that Hamilton City Council needs to make from sale proceeds into food, part of that is to release the food from the
Guarantees
between the Whipple because of their balance sheet and the debt. And so $4 million is going to go into food to reduce debt. Effectively, what's been happening here with food's financial performance being better than budget, their debt is tracking better than projected. So effectively, they have got debt capacity, which has been able to be reutilised to invest into this company.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Rob, I just wanted to clear that up.
Okay.
The Chairman, just answering the other part of that question, if the investment doesn't go ahead, is it available for dividend? The reality is that shareholders in every organisation and every company have to make that trade-off every year. The board would recommend if a dividend can be paid in the interest of the company through cash flows, but ultimately, if there is a choice, then that is definitely something that the company would be talking to the shareholder about.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, and my last question, Chair, is around the borrowing for the new company, and that and that's covered in paragraph 12. That in the past we've used we've had bank borrowings using the property assets of Waikato Innovation Park, which we may not have. I'm just looking here to, my recollection is that there is a guarantee in place on BNZ borrowing for food. Now, does that guarantee extend over to the new co? Given, and my reading is that we're likely to continue with the same.
No.
You're likely to continue with the same bank.
Two steps in that is that with the sale of the property, that link is broken and Food Waikato will stand on its own feet as far as any borrowings. That's the first thing. And the second thing, Dryer 2 will stand on its own feet as far as any borrowing. So any discussions I've had with the bank was based on no securities or guarantees from anybody else except that entity in its own right. Therefore, Food Waikato has no lingering guarantees or overhangs around that at all.
Okay.
Yeah, so Newco 2 will stand on its own feet.
So there will be, so the guarantee that exists at the moment, which the City Council is a participant in, will disappear before this new company is formed. So there's no cross guarantee. I don't know what they legally call them, but sometimes those guarantees just flow on to the next entity.
So that guarantee is only between New Zealand Food Company and Waikato Innovation Park Limited,
Okay.
and that will be extinguished as part of the restructure which occurs at the same time as the sale of the property, Waikato Innovation Park Limited. So therefore, food will stand on its, and we know guarantee. It'll have borrowings from the BNZ,
Yep.
but they will be at a level where the BNZ is comfortable. It does not need any assurance from
Shareholders or directors.
Is correct.
Correct.
Okay.
And that is part of the $4 million sale process going into food to release that.
Okay. And so the intent. So the last part of that question is the intention is that Newco 2, the second spray dryer, will have there will not be a requirement for the shareholders to give any guarantees to the bank on the borrowings on that second spray dryer.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. Any further questions? All right. Oh, sorry, Andrew.
Can this paper be moved into pink when we talk about further things later on?
There are, yeah, this item comes up again in the pink, so it is actually.
No, we're making a decision now
Oh,
on
okay.
this item.
I fully support the Mayor. This is, what you don't do is you don't make a decision until you've had the comprehensive discussion, and this decision involves, I think, some confidential commercial aspects. Certainly with us as a councillor, I would not want representatives of the company, no disrespect, to be there. We want as a board to talk first. At that point I'd propose bringing in the representatives of the company to clarify any questions we have. So I'm going to move that I support the Mayor in moving this into closed session.
Okay, well,
Could I just clarify? I think what Mayor Andrews intending to do here, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but the intention is that the decision is being moved into confidential, not the discussion necessarily. So if we decide to approve or not approve, that will be done after due debate in a confidential, in a closed environment, closed session environment.
Through the Chair,
just hang on, just to be clear on that. When you say the decision, I assume you mean the staff recommendation here, which is in the public already. People have seen that already.
Yep. Yes. But we may wish to. I think where Mayor Andrews coming from is that that there may be preference to debate this in public excluded
For matters of confidentiality, blah, blah, blah.
through the Chair, in my view, this is a matter of commercial sensitivity. I think we as a board may want to ask clarification of staff without company represented as a shareholder. Once we've done that, I would certainly want the members, the representatives of the company to rejoin us at that point. And at that point, then it may be we determine whether or not the comprehensive debate is in public or not. But given the pink page material, I think we do need to do clarification in closed.
Yeah, and I'm going to let the democracy manager have a crack here too.
Shall I give you some
Yes,
advice
please.
to you first? So what I
is we will suspend this discussion. Sorry, guys. Did you bring sleeping bags? What I suggest we do is we suspend the debate now, go to item 14, which is the H3 update for fourth quarter and year-end report, which is on page 111. Do we need a resolution to do this?
You could make a procedural motion, but if everyone's happy, we can just stop.
Is everyone happy with that decision to amend the timing or the order of the agenda? Okay. Sorry, guys, you've been mucked around a bit.
Just through the chair, it would be my desire to invite Stuart and Earl back for an element of that confidential, because there were some things in that. The reason there is a section in the confidential is there are matters which they can expand and talk to in the confidential. So I think through the council, that's appropriate for them to certainly join the first part of that conversation.
Okay.
The intention for that part was really just there were matters which were more commercially sensitive that need to be in pink.
Okay.
I'm very happy for the decision to be a public decision.
All right, thank you. And Sean is here. So, perfect timing, Sean. Okay, we'll now move on to item 14, which is page 111, which is the update for H3. For which a late page was sent out to people. So I hope you've all had a replacement of page 115, which I couldn't find any difference from the one anyway, earlier one. But okay, so Chad and I've got your name, Irene. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, I can just talk briefly to the report. So firstly, just to point out that there's actually two reports rolled into one here. You've got a full year report for the year ended 30 June 2017, and then you've also got the first quarter report for the current financial year. Just a couple of points to overview, I guess. Most of you are well aware that the business that H3 operates in can be quite dynamic. It's based on the number of and type of events that come through, and they can vary quite markedly in terms of the revenue that they drive. But I think it's worth noting too that the results that we've had that you'll see in there in terms of the number of events that are coming through and the attendance that's coming through, that those have all been quite positive. So there's some really good things happening, and our event delivery continues to be to a high standard. We do have some challenges around that, particularly around the financial side of things for the last financial year. I'm sure you would have noted. That comes about from a factor of several different things. Firstly, that dynamic style of business that comes through. So one large rugby game or one large conference can have a market impact on our financials. There's also the continuing pressure that comes from trying to accommodate Founders Theatre events at Claudelands. They are quite time consuming, and it takes more equipment to try and accommodate those events. And finally, we do have ageing assets that are requiring a lot more maintenance work and renewal to try and stay on top of. So those are the key factors that are coming through there. So if we're happy to take questions on that now.
Okay, just one, and we this was just from the minutes of the meeting, last meeting, and staff undertook to circulate further information about Claudelands. It was about, I think someone asked about the cash surpluses or deficits that Claudelands had made. What we've got here is an H3 in toto rather than a Claudelands breakout. So, and so that this doesn't deliver what I think we were asking for on paragraph 7 on page 8.
Yes, if I could just, Mr Chairman, I mentioned this morning that we would officially getting it to you, would have it to you by Friday this week.
Thank you. Okay, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. A couple of questions. One on the financial statements on page 115, the new one. We've got that line item, subsidies and grants, with 0 in it. Is that no longer an income stream?
No.
So it's only there because there's an old comparative, is it, of 10,000, so that will disappear. There's nothing intended to ever come back into that line item again? No. Okay, okay. Does the budget, we've got in here, we've got, if we look on page 126, the budgeted loss for the whole of H3 for 2018 is just under $17 million, and that compares with a budgeted loss up to June, which is on page 115, of 15 million. So we're looking at a budgeted loss for this current year about $2 million more than the loss that we had for the year just finished.
Yes.
I mean, I understand that included in that will be the loss of the revenue from, you know, the food, the commissions that we used to get from food and drink. But are there other particular reasons why that's a $2 million increase?
From a revenue perspective, it's those mix of events that we have coming up and taking over that period. Okay, okay. So really, it's that unknown pot, is it, of your best estimate of Yes.
what events are going to happen,
Yes.
and then what does actually happen from what you know is going to happen and what actually happens. So
Correct.
quite quickly we could remedy that if we had a number of quite successful functions.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, it would certainly go some way. And to Chad's point, it's also around, at that bottom line cost is also the additional maintenance and ageing
Yep.
assets and some of that piece that we're covering as well.
Yeah, okay. So that's over and so you think in the next 12 months we're going to be spending more on replacements of assets than we spent in the last 12 months. Is that what the where the projection currently is?
Within here, it's about our operating costs, so that's primarily about painting, maintenance work, and we're certainly spending more money on both the stadium and Seddon Park.
Yep.
Those assets are both 15 years old. They tend to live outside in the weather,
Yep.
so there's a lot more work that's needing to happen there to make sure that they remain fit for purpose and safe.
Okay. The loss of income from the revision of the catering contract, do you have a figure in this budget as to how much has been provided for? I mean, I know that we talked about estimates of it being around 400,000. Is that kind of where it landed, or is it more or less than that in terms of this budget?
Yes. We took that case when we worked through the numbers and rolled that into the budget.
And so it is round about 400,000.
Yes.
And it could actually be more if with the sevens coming along, that we may well have been able to clip the ticket on the sevens.
No, the sevens is not included in that because the sevens.
But we would have, but had we not renegotiated that food
No,
contract?
because the contract and the way it was worded at the time, it still
it didn't
includes all
include-
large stadium
okay,
events
okay,
stay as they were.
Okay.
It's only for functions, meetings that run through the stadium where we've lost the commission.
Okay, okay, all right, thank you. The other question was the one that came up this morning, and that's on page 123, which looks specifically at the Seddon Park light towers, and it came up as an emerging cost insofar as the long-term plan, the monitoring report is concerned. Is that a cost which will be funded from depreciation? You know, you mentioned 15 years the lights, or whatever period it is, that the lights have been there. Presumably we've been claiming depreciation on those lights over that particular period of time. Is the depreciation sufficient, that we've already claimed on those, sufficient to cover the cost of replacement?
We're still working through getting the visibility of the depreciation directly in relation to the lights.
Okay.
It's still a piece of work.
Is it likely to be close to it, or is it miles away
I'd hate to say
Okay.
either way till we've looked at.
I think that
At
it's fair to say that
granular
it's the cost of what it is to replace them now is what it will be.
Yeah, no, I understand
so,
that, but I'm looking here at what sort of probity we've got around the fact that we have, over the 15 years, charged and collected rates on depreciation for those, and whilst the replacement needs to occur, we may well have already, if you like, pocketed those funds to meet that replacement cost. So it may be just a straight renewal rather than a cost which is popped out, which is over and above what we would have otherwise budgeted for.
So can I just respond to that from a, as you recall, we effectively washed up all of our depreciation we collected from a previous period in 2012. So basically any surplus we had at that particular point in time got absorbed in the 10-year plan at that time. And so effectively we've only really started funding our renewals through depreciation since 2012. But keeping depreciation as a surrogate and renewals on one side, this is scheduled renewals. So if we had been doing it properly, Councillor Pascoe, yes, you're right, we should have had money put aside to do this.
Okay, so all that depreciation, I mean, I'm still struggling to understand, all the depreciation that was claimed up until 2012 has what gone out, has disappeared out the window, or is it?
Oh, no,
I mean, we've presumably collected.
Yeah, so, but basically, you remember in 2012, we basically went through...
I wasn't here then, but...
Neither was I, actually, so I'm just, yeah, so...
All right, you're not to blame for it.
Yeah, no, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not to blame... No, the council... The council in 2012 made a decision in terms of which assets to renew and which assets not to renew, and as part of that decision, effectively then absorbed the rest of our debt capacity for growth, and that was not necessarily all of growth as well. So as part of that, they effectively rewritten the extent to which we've collected depreciation previously to fund renewals. So really, it's a case now of setting it straight going forward, and it may well be in the future when we go to replace an asset, there's still a portion of it where we haven't got enough depreciation put it aside, and we might have to borrow direct rather than actually building our capacity up, if you understand what I mean. So we're in a position of sort of cash flow catch-up, is probably the best way of putting it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, and those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Just on page 115, and I'm sorry, my memory doesn't help me much here. Our revenue's dropped again, not by much, 1.5%, from 2015-16 to 2016-17. Is total revenue for H3, obviously for this year, it's gone down a bit, or certainly hasn't increased. Overall, is it increasing, or if we went back a bit further, how far what would it show?
You'll find that it varies, and I think some of the graphs, if you look at the page number, page 117, you look at the variability month by month in terms of how revenue comes through. It really does vary. So what we found is
I understand that, but all businesses are seasonal, or most businesses are seasonal, but the seasons tend to be, you could have a cracker summer, but next summer's not as good, but it's still our best period of the year.
It can vary markedly. So, for example, Clauden's revenue is down for the year, whereas the stadium revenue is significantly up. That's off the back of two significant rugby internationals that were held during the 16-17 year. So we had the All Blacks against Argentina in September, and then we had the Lions match here in June. So they boost revenue significantly for those games. And bearing in mind that when the budget was set effectively, you're talking about going back, it's the LTP budget we're trying to match up to. So we don't know what events are coming up when we're setting those long-term plan budgets. So we're trying to smooth it out as best we can. At the same time, Clauden's revenue is down. Some of that relates to trying to accommodate the founders' events, but at the same time, we probably missed out on one significant conference that would have made a difference to the revenue line. So it really can be a case of one or two events making a big difference to how our revenue hits.
Okay, thank you. On page 116, you've got this graph of, so it's 2.2 revenue. You've got this graph which is H3 in toto, the whole of H3, and you've got your income accumulating. That's right, isn't it? So at the end, the income is just under $6 million, or just over $6 million. That's
Yes.
right. Yes, so I'm reading right. But then you give us the breakdown, which is the stadiums and Claudelands. You only give us month by month.
Yep.
Why? I mean, it would be useful because looking at that graph, I can't see what Claudelands did for the year. I can't see what unless I add all the months up, and I can't do that because I'm not even sure. I'd have to take a guess at what that blue line is at each month.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I guess we can look at that in future reports to try and get some consistency in the graphs.
Okay.
I think the month-by-month breakdown, what that shows, like I say, is that variability around how we've budgeted.
And we all
how it
accept
moves.
that. We understand that the stadium, that FMG is going to be busy in winter, Seddon's Park going to be busy in summer, all those sort of things. And that's a given, and that's just the nature of the beast. So it would be good to see the annual stuff because previously we used to report, or certainly for Claudelands, and I have seen for Seddon Park and for FMG Stadium annual results. Each one of them is an annual result, and I would like that, and I thought we were going to continue on with that. I don't know if that's what's in your plan, but I would like to see a annual report on all those three assets, if that's possible.
We can certainly
Because we
look
have
at
done that,
yeah.
Sean. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Just on page 119, your first bullet point talks about reduced training. Why does that affect do they get paid? Does someone pay us for training?
Occasionally they do, generally not though for our key clients, so Waikato Rugby, Northern Districts Cricket, but we do record their training sessions because it is use of the facilities. So that's just I guess something that's varied from what we had originally.
So how do the agreements with these organisations work? So, and look, I don't know. It's either the Chiefs or the Waikato Rugby team, I suppose. I don't know.
It's not Chiefs
Not
because
Chiefs,
they
okay.
don't generally train with us. They've got their own training base at Ruakura.
Yep.
So it's Waikato Rugby who have access to Beetham Park, which is the stadium's key training ground over the back of the stadium. And Northern Districts Cricket obviously have access to Seddon Park for their training as well.
Sorry to interrupt you. So do they pay us a flat rate for the year?
Yes.
So it's irrelevant how many times they use it. Is that right or not?
From a financial perspective, yes. Yeah.
So are you just telling us that the training sessions have decreased in higher days in quarter four? Because that's...
It's a utilisation.
Okay, so it's not...
It's
this
about the
has got
higher
nothing...
days.
So they pay us X amount, whether they train there every day, every second day, once a week, it's the same thing. Okay, thank you. So the fact that live performance days are down 22... Oh, sorry. Then it says a strange thing. The last phrase, and performance hire days have decreased by 42% due to no Disney on Ice events this year.
So when you look at Disney on Ice as an event, that runs over a period of days, whereas
Yes.
a lot of our performances, if they come in, they're a one-off and they're in and out in one day.
Yeah.
Disney obviously took up basically the better part of a week by the time they set up in the venue, got the ice all organised, then ran a number of shows. So that makes a big difference because it's running for 7 or 8 days.
Is Disney on Ice a recurring thing?
It will come back periodically. We would certainly like to think so.
Okay. So what are you telling? I just don't know what this is telling us because it's we're talking about rugby events and suddenly business hire events increased, and the problem with this is because we've mixed Claudelands with the rugby with the cricket all in one paragraph.
Yeah.
And I just got completely confused when I read that and I couldn't understand what it meant.
Chairman, if I could just add in there, we were asked at a previous occasion when we did this quarterly report to provide activity, and this particular section is on the number of events. It's not financial, it's just on the number of events.
Oh, just activity, okay.
Yeah, and we're trying to give you a breakdown of the types of activity that we have. Bearing in mind that there are some events that can take place at Claudelands, that can take place at FMG Stadium. So there is some types that rock back and forth between the two venues, but this is purely trying to give you an idea of the number of days utilised just as we have graphs about number of people and so forth.
Okay, thank you. On page 122, and the topic of maintenance on our stadiums has come up before. There's something called a path project for $550,000. I don't know what that is. What's that?
So at Seddon Park, there's a path that runs around the outside of the ground for
Just
patrons to
outside the
walk
picket
around.
fence. So they're just outside the picket fence.
Yep,
is that path?
correct.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
So there's a path that runs all the way around, and various other paths that provide access
Yep.
through the facility. That path was a cobblestone path that had been laid probably back, I'm guessing, about the late 80s, early 90s. And
Was it not relayed when the
No.
oh,
No, that hasn't been touched. May have been touched in early 2000, but it's been a long time since it's been
so
touched.
when the stadiums were built?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
It
all
may
right,
have
okay,
been.
anyway, yeah.
So it's been there for a long time,
Yeah.
and what's happened over time is that path has lifted and worn, and it's had become quite a significant health and safety matter. It had been in our previous LTPs and had been unfunded, I think at least in 2 prior LTPs.
Okay.
So while we did that work, we also undertook quite a lot of drainage work. We were having issues with water getting into the players' changing areas. The levels there are fairly tight. So we've undertaken a significant amount of drainage work to take the water. We put a new stormwater connection out onto Tristram Street to get the water away. It also ponded in front of where the temporary stands normally sit, and we've replaced the majority of that path with a proper concrete path. That will also allow vehicle access around the ground to stop the path getting damaged in the future. So quite a lot of work's gone on to make sure that the facility is fit for purpose and safe moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So when did the path? So I haven't been to Seddon Park this season yet because the season hasn't quite started. So when was the
First
path
cricket
done?
game started today, so
Oh, did
Plunkett
it?
Shield's
Okay,
on, so you
all
can
right.
go down and have a look.
Okay, so when was the path? The path has been replaced.
Yes, it has been
Oh,
replaced.
okay.
Yep.
And that was a new last cricket season, was it?
No,
Last?
no, it
Oh,
happened
okay,
at
so
the
it
end of
happened
the
over
season,
winter.
so it's ready for
Okay,
the upcoming
so I
season.
won't have seen it.
Yep.
Right. Thank you. The chiller costs and things like that for the FMG stadium. Who is responsible for those? Obviously us. Is that part
yeah,
of the
that's
agreement
part-
with our tenants in there?
Well, it's part of the air conditioning system that services the whole building, so it's a packaged chiller unit that sits on the roof that creates
Oh,
cold
sorry, I
water
was
that-
thinking booze.
No.
Shows you my
so
focus,
it's
doesn't
part
it?
of the air conditioning system.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I was
so-
thinking warm beer and thinking that's got to happen.
No, we don't want warm beer.
That's priority one. Okay, thank you. And just getting back to, my concerns about the trend in revenue dropping, and there was a sort of a 1.5% drop last year, last full financial year, but the year before. This is even more scary. It would appear there's a 13% drop in revenue for the first quarter.
Page 126.
So we're talking page 126. Now, you did right. Yours is a lumpy business. I know that. But you know where I'm coming from. Everyone knows what I think about Claudence. But it just concerns me that that's a big drop. So what was there last year that we missed out on? Is this Disney or something? Is it?
Blacks, Argentina, All Blacks.
Oh, okay, those things. Okay. And of course, the reality is we're not going to get a test match every.
No,
Mind
so-
you, this hasn't got,
Lions was at the end of last year.
Yeah, okay.
So, and we know that we won't get a rugby test for in 2018 or 2019. So that's been confirmed by New Zealand Rugby as part of their schedule across the country.
Okay. And if you go right to the bottom, the deficit's up a little bit, 2.5% or something like that, which is correct, I can promise you. Okay. Now, the sevens, I know, I fully understand that we're giving the facility away for free because no one's using it. It wasn't going to be used that day, and I'm neither here nor there on that one. But do we get a cut of any revenue, any of the hospitality and that, or is that all part of the contract too, is it?
No, we don't get anything.
Beg your pardon?
We gave it all away.
Okay. Were there any, the rust and carry on that you're doing in the Waikato Stadium and the chiller update, which I've now found out is not about keeping your beer cold, were those things that were budgeted?
They are things that have largely been budgeted through the
In a generic
the
repairs
renewals
and-
program,
okay.
and yeah, repairs and maintenance. Some of these things come up maybe sooner or more quickly than you expect to. So things like the tie rods at the stadium, you may not know what they are either. If you look at the Perry stand at the stadium, it has what looks like cables coming off the light towers down to the roof of the stand. Those are tie rods. They're actually about an inch thick. And what's happened is that they have been threaded in the middle, and where they've been threaded together, as water's got into there over the years, they've started to rust away, and corrosion's got into those joints. So we've engaged structural engineers and even a corrosion expert to investigate that. We've basically patched them up, which has brought us about 18 months before they have to be fully replaced. Okay. And that'll be worked into the long-term plan and the renewals budget moving forward.
Okay, so we won't see an item, risks and opportunities, this financial year for these?
No.
Okay. Okay, that's me done, thank you. Jeff? Oh. He's pushed his button and he's buggered off. Is he just outside the door, is he? No, okay, would someone else please ask a question so we can give Jeff time to get back?
We can maybe ask the question that was asked earlier.
Oh, okay.
Northern Districts Cricket and the revenue that we get from them around Seddon Park. So I believe someone asked about that.
Yep.
There is a fixed revenue in their heads of agreement that we have with them. So they pay us $90,000 a year, and that's a fixed amount every year.
So it's effectively rent. They pay
Yes,
a set
yes.
rent of 90,000. It's
Yes.
not per usage or
No, it's a fixed.
Numbers through the toll gate.
No, it's a fixed
Yep.
amount. On top of that, we also have a separate agreement with them where they contribute towards some of our match management costs with our staff going down there, and some of our turf staff. They also pay for the use of basically electricity on the lights when they play their games. Okay. So that varies depending on the number of games that are going through. In total, I think last year it was about $60,000.
And that's to get our guys to prepare the pitch for a match.
It's
So that's some degree. That's some effort to. So they have a blanket 90,000. Did you say?
Yes.
90,000 for a year's usage, and then some. Then they pay a little bit for every time you have to do some pitch repairs and marking out the things.
No, actually maintaining the pitch and keeping that up to standard, that's
included
an
in the
obligation within the heads of agreement and covered in the 90,000.
Oh, okay.
So really it's about having extra staff on hand to be available to move covers on and off the pitch if it's raining. Like I say, having our staff there to help set up the Sky broadcast trucks and managing the events on match day as well. So that's what that goes towards.
Thank you.
Jeff's going to be a few minutes, so his question is moving.
Okay, we might need to.
Question on that is the 90,000. Is that a fair payment in relation to what other councils would collect off their local cricket in the context of how popular cricket has become, with T20s and so forth, and presumably the fact that revenue will have increased over the last 4 or 5 years from cricket matches?
Look, if I could answer that, we don't have detail on what other cities get in revenue from their local cricket organisations or what their arrangements are with NZ Cricket, but the arrangement that we have in place at Seddon Park is effectively, as Chad said, a flat rental of $90,000, and that ties us to an obligation to always maintain Seddon Park at international test cricket level, and whatever that level happens to be on any given year. So it's a very, very long-term contract. I think it's got over another 10 years to go. 10 years plus. And clearly, unlike FMG Stadium, where we do have the opportunity to generate other revenues through arrangements with rugby and also with other activities, it's much, much more limited at Seddon Park. So our revenue generating opportunity there is poor, but our costs of delivery move with general cost increases, but also the cost increase in terms of what's demanded for cricket at international level. We were very happy last year, for example, to take another international cricket test to help out after Napier Oval had been closed down. That's a good example. Great for us to generate that business into Hamilton, get the activity, get the utilisation, but it did not raise any additional revenue for us whatsoever.
So even though the contract is long, the 90,000 is fixed into that?
Correct.
So there's no right of review of the yearly rental?
There's no adjustments. The only opportunity that we do have is if there is a significant change in some arrangements that might trigger an alternative. So in some instances where we've done some work, Northern Districts have agreed, that's a bit different to the norm, have agreed to actually pay or have agreed to a rental supplement. But you'll also recall we have fortunately had some instances where Northern Districts Cricket and Cricket New Zealand have actually supported some of the capital upgrade work that we've done from time to time. We've been able to negotiate that, but otherwise it's a pretty finite opportunity for us there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Councillor Taylor has not returned.
We would happily, we'll let him know.
Okay.
We'll have a chat with him.
Thank you. Where's the resolution? Okay, so we're all the way back to page 111. That the Finance Committee receives the report. I'll move. I have a seconder. Mallet, Pascoe. Those in favour, those against. Is anyone against? Okay, it's unanimous. Yeah, probably, Chief. Thank you. Now I think, am I right? Have I got everything's done? Yep. Now we're moving into the pink. Okay. Right. I'd now like to move a resolution that we move into public excluded. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Sean. And Irene. Mallet, King. Those in favour. We've got a. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Have we got a quorum? 2 minutes before we go into pink. Oh, you're coming back, are you? Absolutely. Okay, all right.
Wouldn't miss it for the
Well, hang on. We'll do the confidential thing. So those in favour, those against. Was anyone against? Okay, unanimous to go into.